Good afternoon. My name is Danny Plogger, and I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Transit Association. I want to welcome everybody to our third 2024 VTA DRPT Joint Lunch and Learn webinar program. VTA is so thankful for this partnership and the opportunity to offer our members and the Commonwealth's transit community a deeper dive into the public transportation challenges, issues, processes, and opportunities with insight from the experts at DRPT and our transit partners. This webinar series would not be possible without the support, partnership, and expertise of DRPT. As a reminder, our former programs are on VTA's YouTube page if you'd like to go back and review them. And as always, if you have any questions during the presentation, please put them in the Q&A box and I'll ask them at the appropriate time. And one last final piece of housekeeping. The application period for our Virginia Transit Leadership Institute is now open. If you or someone within your organization is a good candidate for this exciting, first-of-its-kind leadership program, I encourage you to visit vatransit.com/VTLI to learn more and to apply. Today's program is digging into DRPT's data portal. If you have not already given it a try, after today's presentation, I encourage you to give it a look over. As a self-professed data nerd, I've personally found it to be super useful for helping VTA's advocacy and education efforts, especially with our elected officials and the broader stakeholder community. Now, this afternoon, I have the pleasure of introducing our partners in this webinar series and today's presenters, Grace and Dan from DRPT. Grace is a statewide transit planner at the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation, who specializes in data analysis and visualization. At DRPT, she's worked on numerous data projects, including the Open Data Portal, Geospatial Data Hub, and the Coordinated Human Services Mobility Plan Update. Prior to joining the agency, she was a GIS analyst at HDR and has a Master's of Urban and Regional Planning from Virginia Commonwealth University, Go Rams Go, along with a graduate certificate in Geospatial Information Systems. Dan serves as a statewide transit planning manager with DRPT, and his time at DRPT has overseen the implementation of Merit, the capital assistance prioritization process, the development of a statewide transit studies and guidelines, and has supported transit planning efforts completed by service providers throughout the state. He currently oversees DRPT's capital and technical planning functions, and prior to joining the Commonwealth of Virginia, he worked with the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, City of Topeka Park, Maryland, the City of Bogota, Colombia, and as a private sector planning consultant. So please grab your lunch, sit back, and enjoy a great program from our partners, Grace and Dan. Turning it over to you guys.
All right, thank you, Danny. Thank you very much for that introduction. And we'll go ahead and get started today. And thank you all for joining for the Lunch and Learn. Again, my name is Dan Sonenklar. I'm a statewide transit planning manager with DRPT, and I'm joined by Grace Stankus, who is a statewide transit planner with our agency. And today we will be digging into data and giving an overview of our DRPT data processes and products and our new open data portal, which really showcases these various products to the public and any other interested parties that want to dig into our data. So next slide, please. I'll start here with an outline of today's agenda.
It's switching over. I can't tell.
It is not switching over.
Okay. There we go.
Okay, great. Thank you. So here we start out with an agenda for today's presentation. We'll start with a discussion of the DRPT data processes and standards. I'll go into a little bit about how we use the data to support statewide grant programs and other processes. And then we'll also cover some enhanced reporting and review that we've implemented over the past few years, which supports those processes and really makes the open data portal possible. As part of the discussion, we'll also discuss our efforts to deploy GTFS, or the General Transit Feed Specification, statewide, and then we'll review a timeline of our data visualization efforts and tools over the past few years. At that point, I'm going to hand it over to Grace to give an overview of our current data portal and kind of highlight some of those products within there. And we'll finish up our presentation with that live demo and question and answer session to address any of your concerns. So let's get into it. Next slide, please. Thank you. So although DRPT has long collected data from transit service providers throughout the state, we really started developing our processes for data collection and setting standards over the past 5 years or so. Since 2018, as outlined on this slide, there's some changes in federal and state laws and guidelines really pushed us to use data in new ways and have redefined a lot of our business practices and challenged us to ensure that data is reported in a timely manner and that it is accurate when it is reported. So starting with federal regulations and laws, MAP 21 and the FAST Act introduced transit asset management requirements, which we as the state agency and other transit providers are required to follow. It imposed new requirements on asset tracking and necessitated that DRPT create a Tier 2 TAM plan to support rural and smaller urban area agencies. In addition to this, at the state level, in 2018, the General Assembly passed a package of bills called the Transit Reforms Legislation, which created new program parameters for DRPT. We adopted a new performance-based formula for distributing our operating funds, and we introduced an updated scoring and prioritization methodology for capital projects. So these policy changes from both levels at the federal and the state really created an incentive for DRPT to improve our data collection, review, and management, and has made these new portals that we've created really possible. Next slide. Thank you. So looking specifically at the topic of state programs, the transit reforms legislation that I mentioned that was passed in 2018 was really a game changer for us in many ways, including the way that we collect, process, and analyze data. Primarily the operating assistance program, it encourages us to distribute our funds based on a performance-based formula that takes monthly reported data from all agencies. The capital assistance program, it created a prioritization and scoring process that allocates and assigns resources to capital projects based on state of good repair principles. The aim being to replace the oldest assets first before approving new expansion kinds of projects. Both of these projects, or programs rather, require good data. The operating assistance program requires multiple metrics as key inputs to the formula that I will highlight on the next slide. And the capital assistance program necessitates accurate asset inventories and up-to-date information on in-service dates and mileage for existing assets that are owned by transit service providers, since we score and prioritize those replacements based on this data. So next slide, thank you. So for the operating assistance formula, as mentioned, we distribute these funds based on a performance-based methodology. And since the allocation levels are based on these performance measures, accuracy and reliability are extremely important in this process. To do this, we ask that transit service providers throughout the state report ridership, revenue miles, and revenue hours monthly. We also ask that those that report passenger miles traveled, or PMT, to the National Transit Database also report that to us on an annual basis. And of course, we also gather operating expense information through audited expense reports. With those measures, we also are able to calculate other data points that are used in the operating assistance allocation. And that includes passengers per hour, passengers per mile, cost per hour, cost per mile, and cost per passengers. And I'm sorry, there is a typo on this slide. So those 5 measures are calculated based on what's reported to us to help us determine how we are going to distribute our operating assistance funds. With these statewide programs in mind, especially operating assistance, we've also implemented new enhanced performance reporting and review requirements for the operational data that we collect. So for reporting, each transit agency is required to report the previous month's ridership, miles and hours, directly to DRPT. And agencies, like I said, that report PMT also report that to us on an annual basis. We've also incentivized on-time performance, on-time reporting by making reporting to us in a timely manner one of 4 criteria that's used to determine whether an agency receives incentive points within our capital assistance program. So essentially, if an agency complies with all 4 of those criteria, they can receive up to 5 additional points on all of their capital assistance requests. So not only is it a requirement through all of our grant guidance, we have also incentivized it through those means. And with regard to staff review, we complete a monthly review to ensure timely reporting and flag potential errors with the data that's been reported to us. And we perform an annual deep dive data audit to check reported data in the context of historic measures and review backup documentation and other kinds of data that's been reported to other agencies like NTD. In addition to enhancing all of our data reporting, review, and methods over this time, we've also worked hard to ensure that GTFS coverage throughout the state has been implemented. And GTFS, as I mentioned before, is the General Transit Feed Specification, and it is the data protocol that is used by applications such as Google Maps or the Transit app to provide data to users on where and when their buses or trains are coming. And so by implementing GTFS statewide and ensuring that those GTFS feeds are updated on a regular basis, we've been able to really support planning and policy initiatives at the state and local levels. So currently we have 100% coverage of fixed route services with static feeds throughout the state. The data is maintained by either the agencies themselves or by DRPT on behalf of the fixed route transit operators. We do provide technical assistance to rural and some of the small urban agencies, which covers the development of a feed and the maintenance of it. Many larger agencies also in the state have real-time feeds as well, allowing for real-time bus arrival information, which is that data that feeds into things like the Transit app and others that provide that to riders. So this data serves also as the basis for most of our statewide transit mapping products, which are accessible through the Open Data Portal and that Grace will highlight for you all momentarily. But we also are able to leverage these for use in studies at the local level, at the regional level, and at the statewide level as well. And so the combination of these enhanced data reporting and review processes and the development of GTFS data has really made the data portal a possibility. So the topics I've covered thus far illustrate how we've worked to make our processes and review more robust, which has brought us to this point, that we can illustrate accurate reviewed data to the public and update this data in a timely manner throughout the year. But before getting into the demo, I wanted to just give a short history of the data visualization tools that DRPT has developed and deployed that have kind of brought us to this moment in time. So our first iteration of this was in 2020 when we launched the DRPT original Open Data Portal to illustrate the 6-year improvement plan. This was supported by the Tyler Technologies Socrata platform and included a map and tabular elements that summarize projects that we were funding through our 6-year program. All data could be filtered and downloaded, and it was a great source of information for not only our transit partners, but also DRPT staff. In 2022, coming out of the pandemic, we had a concerted effort agency-wide to add additional elements to this platform. It included a transit asset management plan summary and dashboard, which really highlighted the state of good repair of a lot of our vehicle assets and facilities throughout the state. And we also launched some performance data reporting modules in that same period of time. And that brings us to now in 2024, when we just a few months ago, we launched the new DRPT Open Data Portal. So this platform uses a mix of Power BI dashboards and ArcGIS Online to provide data that is also downloadable and able to be manipulated by whoever pulls it down. And it's really improved upon the previous tools in a number of ways. A much more friendly user interface that is clearer to use. And I will say that I think graphics also are a step up above what they once were in our. And so that brings me to the end of my portion of the presentation. I'm going to kick it over to Grace to pick it up from here to walk you all through the open data portal. Thank you all.
Thanks, Dan. As Dan previously mentioned, a lot of this kind of enhanced data collection and maintenance that DRPT has kind of embarked on these last couple of years has really led to a pretty robust data portal. And so I'm just going to quickly highlight all of the elements that are in the open data portal. We have performance measures, which track transit ridership, Virginia Breeze ridership, and other metrics, and some rail metrics as well. And then this year we have the FY 2025 6-year improvement program visualization, which we created on ArcGIS Online. We have a geospatial data portal where you can view and download rail and transit data stories, which is a new addition that is serves to add context to all of this data. We have a smart scale dashboard to track the progress of DRPT administered smart scale projects. DRPT financial reports. This includes the SIP and the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program, the STIP. And we have our DRPT strategic plan progress is also on the data portal. So without further ado, I think I'm going to begin the demo. It goes off on a hitch. Okay, great. So just to take it from the top, I know this has had a few different iterations over the past couple of months, but for now, and I think it's here to stay, the open data portal can be accessed on DRPT's website. All of these materials, even if they're created on an external site, they are all accessed through DRPT. And so on this top header bar, can be accessed by clicking the Open Data Portal button. And this brings you to the home page, which has all of the elements that I just mentioned, the performance measures, the 6-year improvement program, data stories, the GIS data portal, links back to the financial reports and strategic plans and smart scale dashboard. And so I'm going to begin by covering the performance measures. You have to bear with me, the internet's been a little slow. Just wondering. It's been really slow. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is sort of another homepage for all of the performance measures dashboards. So we have the Breeze, rail performance, which tracks, I think, trucks diverted from highways. And then we have the transit performance data dashboard and the rail industrial access dashboard. And so I'm going to begin with the transit performance data dashboard. So again, we did display all of this data on the previous Socrata platform, but we ended up pivoting, and this was created on Power BI using the monthly performance data that is reported to us. And so we have on the first page, definitions. It's really kind of meant for people who are just discovering transit or just have some questions, kind of a one-stop shop to answer questions and kind of provide a little bit of context to transit performance data and how DRPT uses it. And so we have ridership, which is updated quarterly for the previous quarter. So I just finished earlier this month the update for the third quarter of FY24. And so it has a lot of different capabilities to kind of search and slice and dice data, find what you're looking for. I use this all the time just to find data from past fiscal years, if I have to do any sort of reporting. It's really helpful. I think it's a lot easier to use. So we have ridership service, which is the revenue hours and revenue miles that, again, are reported to us on a monthly basis. We have it filtered just to FY24. And then passenger measures, which these were calculated by using ridership and the hours and miles data. Again, probably like the best feature of this is that you can download the source data. So if you're looking for a little bit more like robust data analysis, this is the entire data sheet that we just add on to each quarter. This has data from I believe FY19 up until this previous quarter. And so this is just sort of the entire data set that we continue to build on, that can be used for any sort of analysis that's cannot be done in the dashboard. And then go back and just quickly mention the Breeze dashboard, because this is another fun one. Okay. Again, this data was displayed on the previous performance data portal on Socrata, but we changed it a little bit and put it into Power BI. This again adds just like a little bit of context, definition of what the Virginia Breeze line is, and also displays the ridership by month and route. I know the Virginia Breeze program manager gets these questions a lot, and so he's been able to direct people to this just so they can kind of, like, he gets a lot of questions about like who's going from Blacksburg to Dulles, and you can do like Blacksburg to Dulles in FY24, and you can see that like 3,500 passengers rode from Blacksburg to Dulles, and I guess Valley Flyer is the only route that makes those stops. For some other routes, I think Christiansburg to Dulles. Yeah, so there are two different routes, and you can see that of those 468, 345 were rode on the Highlands Rhythm, and 123 rode that between those two stops on the Valley Flyer. And so again, this is just kind of a lot, I guess it provides enhanced capabilities versus what we had previously. And then we also have on-time performance for all 4 Virginia Breeze routes, and then individual routes. So again, you can just select a specific month and just find those metrics if you're just looking for a particular route. Again, this I think has been very helpful for just stakeholders interested in Breeze data. And again, download data button has the latest update of data for manipulation on Excel. I'm not going to get into the rail measures, so I'm going to go back and I will move on to the SIP. But before I do that, does anybody have questions about the performance data measures dashboard?
No questions so far.
Okay, I'll continue on then, and a little demo of the FY25 SIP. Okay, as previously mentioned, this was developed, again, this is totally different than how it looked previously on Socrata, and we developed this in-house on ArcGIS Online. Before I begin, I'm going to open the SIP glossary, which is something that was new for this year. It would open in a window if that's how your settings are, but I have it to automatically download. And this just provides, again, additional context to the grant recipients, the service that is supported, and the service areas for every transit agency and commuter assistance agency and rail grantee. So this is like a pretty good resource. We've never had anything like this until this year, to my knowledge. And so this has been, I think, very helpful for those viewing the SIP. But when you first open the SIP, you land on the summary page, which just has a quick overview of the FY25 SIP, the program, all of the funding that was provided in this year's program, and a little bit of background about the SIP development schedule. Fitting to ArcGIS Online kind of provided additional customization that we didn't have previously, so we were able to add these graphics and just sort of provide additional context for what the SIP is. So the summary, again, it has just like the PDF version of the SIP, it has the allocations tables, and just kind of an overall view of the three kind of main program areas that are in the SIP. Revenues, which can be filtered here because this is a very long spreadsheet. And again, the kind of the top line numbers, and then the reconciliation, again, as it's seen in the SIP, which shows the unobligated balances between the allocations and the revenues for this year. We have there's a specific section for rail. I'm not really going to get into that, but that is there. It looks very similar to transit, except of course it has rail projects. Transit, again, similarly to the summary tab and the rail tab, we have a quick snapshot of the transit program for FY25. This is really just kind of to provide an overview. If people aren't really interested in like digging into the data, they're just kind of looking for top line numbers, like how much did VRE get this year, how much went to MPOs, that sort of thing. But I think this provides a really good snapshot that, again, we just haven't had in previous years. So to dig into the data a little bit more, this shows the all 416 projects. They are in a list here. They are filterable by the 4 filters at the top. We have recipient, which is this is the, I guess, official name of the grantee that is receiving the grant funds from us. And then we have, get further into the weeds, we have the actual service that is supported by the grant funding, and so I can get into that in a little bit. And then you can also filter by the DRPT program area if you just would like to see received commuter assistance operating funds. You can filter that way, and then this list filters. You can also filter by VDOT district. And so to kind of show an example of why adding this second tier of naming filter is helpful, and again has never been done, is so in the example of Arlington, Arlington Transit receives funding directly to the County of Arlington for Arlington Transit Service, but then they also receive money through MVTC Arlington. And so this just kind of shows that grant funding can go from DRPT to different sources or different, I guess, grantees, but it can support the same one individual service, if that makes sense. And again, this is new this year. We haven't had this kind of granular data, and I think it's kind of helped unwind or untangle some questions. And so to get further into the projects that you have your grantees selected, you can kind of toggle through and see the individual project costs, the match rates, where the fund is coming from, or where the money is coming from, the fund. And again, this summary, so this shows exactly how much is going to Arlington Transit, how much is coming from state money, and the total project costs over 7 projects. And so this, I think it's a little interactive and it has its quirks, but I think overall, an improvement from what we had in previous data portals. And then another way to look at the data is if you're just kind of want to look at the numbers and you're not interested in having as much interaction, you can just toggle over to the tabular view. And so one thing to note about this is that the filters between the map view and the tabular view, they are retained. So since I have Arlington Transit filtered on the map view, it's still filtered on a tabular view. Like they're kind of connected in that way. So if you wanted to just get into the tabular view and filter that way, you would have to clear all filters from the map view. And then that's how you would view projects in the tabular format. Before I go back to other elements in the open data, one other thing that I wanted to mention, you can export the data. And so I have it filtered by extent here, but if you wanted to export the entire data set, you can click this button here with the 4 dots at the top of the list and export to CSV, and that will, again, like the performance data, just trigger a download of data in a tabular format. Or if you'd like to just filter by a VDOT district and just export that, you can export your selection that way. So again, this is like just a different way to interact with SIP data that we've just never had. I think that covers everything with the SIP, not everything, but that covers what we talked about. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, there's one question from Arnold, and he asks, do you distinguish between fixed route and demand response systems when evaluating on-time performance?
So we currently don't collect on-time performance for the transit agencies. The on-time performance that I showed was for Virginia Breeze, which they do collect, and we report on-time performance, but we do not, as of now, collect it from transit agencies. So no, we do not have that data for fixed route or demand response.
Okay. And there's one other question is there or will there be a user guide for the data portal?
Not to my knowledge. Dan, do you know something? I saw you just went off of mute.
I came off of mute. No, we do not have plans at this time to develop a user guide for the open data portal, but if it is something that is desired, we can certainly look into doing so.
And I would also like to note that this will be on YouTube probably by next Monday for those who like to go back and view it again to kind of get a little refresher of what Grace and Dan went through.
Okay, thanks for fielding those questions. I'm going to exit out of the SIP, unless there are any others, and continue on the open data portal elements. Okay, so I will go into the geospatial data portal. This is a little bit of a newer feature that we've created, I guess, in the last 6 months or so. We just were getting a lot of one-off questions for transit and rail data. And so we decided, you know, it might be best if we just make this accessible to the public. And so people can get in and download the data and kind of use it how they will. And so we just have a gallery here of the rail applications. We have a transit and a commuter assistance programs application that you can view just to see the GTFS services, and this kind of provides a comprehensive look at all of the transit services in Virginia. You can select by agency, so I'll use the Arlington again, and you can just see this is, I update this GTFS data quarterly, so this is kind of fresh from March. You can just see the routes and stops, click into a stop and find location data. Even able to get a Google Street View. So if you click into here, you can see stop on Street View. Hopefully, yep, there it is. That was a cool feature. I was excited about that when I figured out how to do that. And so this is just one of the applications that we have available on the data portal. Also, you can download rail and transit data. So again, we get a lot of questions about transit routes and stops. Again, this is updated quarterly, and so you can just get in here and download the entire data set and kind of, you know, slice it and dice it however they would like. It just makes it easier that it's all in one place. This is like the authoritative data set. So that's kind of, I think that's been a nice value add. And then at the end, we just have some featured GIS work that we've done, the Virginia State Rail Plan, which was done entirely on ArcGIS, and the Coordinated Human Services Mobility, the Chisholm Plan update, which we also created a story map version of that on ArcGIS Online. I think that covers it for the GIS Open Data Portal. Were there any questions about this section?
No questions.
And I'm going to go back. And the final element that I'm going to show is the Smart Scale dashboard. This full screen again. Yeah, this was another data product that we created on ArcGIS Online. It shows active transit projects, active smart scale rail and transit projects throughout Virginia. And right now there are just 14 that are active. We update this quarterly as well. So you can select by recipient. Again, it has all of those capabilities. I guess Alexandria City has 3 smart scale projects. And so it just has a quick kind of brief overview of the project and the most recent milestone. And then if you click into this tab, it shows all of the milestones and their anticipated completion date. And for the ones that have been completed, the actual completion date. And so again, this is updated quarterly, and we expect this to kind of grow as transit projects or as the smart scale projects become online. But right now, this was also on the Socrata, and so we had to pivot and come up with a solution for this. And I think this has really been a good one. So that is all I have. I think for the smart scale dashboard, but I'm happy to take any questions about this or any of the other elements that were demoed.
We don't have any questions right now, but you can also reach out to Grace and Dan afterward with any other questions.
If I could just add one thing here, the Open Data Portal has a number of other links and other resources within it. It's really being utilized to house a lot of our documents, processes, and data. And so if you're looking for financial information, so that could be links to old 6-year improvement plans and other things along those lines, they're also accessible through that portal. And so thank you, Grace, for that excellent walkthrough. As you all see, I think the portal looks really nice. It presents things in a very concise way, and hopefully all of our transit partners throughout the state are able to utilize it and grab the data if they need to.
Excellent. Thank you again. Grace and Dan, and their contact information is on the screen. Please reach out to them if you have any questions. And we do have one more question from Arnold. Do you have to require more data from recipients than is required by law to build it?
I'll take a crack at answering that. So most of the data that we collect is a subset of what is required to be reported to the National Transit Database. We used to collect more than was required because of the GTFS feed development, but now that is required for all fixed route providers. And so we were actually a couple of steps ahead of the game with that requirement here in Virginia. But yeah, from what I can tell, we are within what is required for the federal level as well.
Excellent. Once again, thank you, Dan and Grace, and have a great weekend, everybody. And thank you for joining us for our third Lunch and Learn of 2024. Have a great afternoon.